What is the purpose of these documentaries? The I Am a Killer production team argues that it is important for each of our stories to be heard. However, if you pay attention to the production, you may see that the purpose of I Am a Killer is not to simply hear a story. This video essay is my attempt to show you how a production team works to prompt our action. They rely on pathetic appeal by blending pathemata to influence our compassion and empathy. And I must admit that after watching the show, I became obsessed with thinking about law school to help people like David Barnett. So let's see how they did it. The story of David Barnett. He was born in Missouri, and by the time he was 8 years old, he had lived with 8 different families, until a man named John Barnett adopted him. From then on, David's stories and unpleasant memories revolve around John Barnett and John's family. The family consisted of his mother and father, who were also his next-door neighbors. In the episode, David explains how he spent most of his time at his grandparents' house as an attempt to avoid John. However, his grandfather often reminded him too much of John, the man he was trying to get away from. The story of David Barnett is a series of running. He ran away from home, from his partner, from his child, from his education, and from his job. In the midst of his running, he felt the need to tell someone about his unpleasant experiences surrounding his father, John. He went to tell his grandparents, and the reaction he got sent him into a rage. The rage resulted in 20 stab wounds, 2 dead bodies, and a life in prison waiting to be killed by the state. Now, while awaiting his execution, David Barnett was presented with an opportunity to share his story with Netflix. I Am a Killer is the newest Netflix series featuring content about death row inmates. The inmates are interviewed in their environment, and each inmate narrates their own episode. However, all editing and interview questions are carefully designed to follow a pattern. This pattern looks like this. They begin with a black screen. After the black screen, we are introduced to the narrator's voice.
To feel my pain.
Then it's a black screen again. This time the black screen has white text, and there is instrumental music in the background. Again, we go back to the narrator's voice.
To feel my pain.
And slowly, we begin to see slow-motion panoramic shots of nature. After seconds of the nature shots, we meet the narrator's face, David Barnett in this case. Aside from these being the only things we see, the only things we hear are birds chirping, instrumental music, statements by affected individuals.
Went up to see what was going on, and I tried to talk to him.
And David Barnett.
I just wanted to die. No more.
So why has the production team chosen to do it this way? Ross Young and Gareth Morrow, members of the production team, decided to create a question and answer blog for the fans of the show. They described the role of I Am a Killer as profiles killers and their stories from a multitude of perspectives. So based on the fact that the only people interviewed are David Barnett's wife, David's foster mom of 6 months, David's high school best friend, a juror on the David Barnett's case, and the man that read John Barnett's eulogy, we know that the perspectives are unbalanced in this narrative. The episode's pathemata of vivid presentation include real-life people, old images, and the use of music. These pathemata create effect to give the emotional appeals necessary to prompt action in us, the audience. It is an interesting thing to see what is included and left out in this episode. For example, when David began to go into detail about the day of the killings, the audience is given a screen with transitionary content, meaning we are not looking at David Barnett, we are not looking at murder scene images, we are looking at actors move in slow motion across the screen. As Longacre and Walker explain, the presentation guides the audience to form the particular ideation enthymeme that the reader intends. The production also creates interpretation to trigger heavy emotions in the audience. Feelings gain significance through interpretation, even if interpretation may be largely unconscious. The title of the episode creates one set of anticipated interpretations. David Barnett is just a killer. But the images of his childhood and interviews of relatives, mixed with the stories he shared about the abuse he faced, destroyed the anticipated interpretation. The destroyed interpretations are what make this episode powerful. We see a human with a story and not just a killer. Anger and conviction of seeing a bad person may then become feelings of compassion and empathy. We may even think, of course, or duh, that crime was just bound to happen from the result of his life experiences. Murder remains a top issue in the United States. Statistics, facts, and arguments about who becomes a candidate for being a murderer are everywhere. But the problem remains. I Am a Killer is a strong example of the power of appealing to audiences by appealing to their emotions. By using vivid presentation and a selective narrative, I Am a Killer makes an argument. The production team argues by prompting audiences to go on an emotional journey, to be invested in the main character, and experience heartbreak by the story and sadness with themselves about being judgmental towards another human who happened to live a seemingly worse life. This emotional journey is not limited to this one episode or series. But one limit to such a concept may be that these emotional journeys only work if they are unexpected.